Okay, we're back. Get into the story right here. On Talk Radio, live in 4K. Also, uncensored TV. Let's get into it.
For corruption. A new report says he embezzled the aid money. A gruesome video has gone viral. It shows the beheading of a Ukrainian. And does the battle for Bakhmut have a winner? Russia says yes, Ukraine says no. We'll cover all of this, starting with the report on Zelensky. It was released by an American investigative journalist, Seymour Hersh, a Pulitzer Prize-winning reporter. Recently, he was in the news for saying that America bombed the Nord Stream gas pipelines. And now he's dropped another bombshell. He says Zelensky and his team have embezzled about $400 million. $400 million. Apparently, this was done last year. Do you remember what else started last year? Zelensky began his sacking spree. He fired many top officials, all for corruption. Now the new report says this was done to placate the US. And that American officials knew that Zelensky and team are skimming millions. They wanted the corruption to be more discreet. This is all in Seymour Hersh's report. He says CIA Director William Burns presented a list of 35 names to Zelensky, and some of those people were fired. Zelensky was under pressure from the Americans, so he sacked some of his people. Then Hersh goes on to make other claims, like how Zelensky is actually using American funds to buy Russian oil. He apparently skirts sanctions and uses American funds to get the Russian oil. It seems counterintuitive. Why would he do it? So the obvious question is, how much of the report is true and how does Seymour Hersh know all of this? He says that his sources are anonymous US intelligence officials. But we'll never know for sure, I guess. So expect public denials and a veto on the investigations. But the truth may not come out anytime soon. And speaking of doubt in the face of disturbing information, there's a horrific video that has been...
It has to be anonymous. I mean, you expect him to give up his sources and put them in jeopardy under the type of administration that they have right now, especially, I mean, regardless, if the administration is doing corrupt things and you got people willing to speak out, you got to keep them anonymous for more information. It's just common sense, you know?
Been circulating online. We've decided not to show it, and we urge you, for your own peace of mind, to not watch it. The video shows the beheading of a Ukrainian. It was done with a knife, allegedly by Russian soldiers, and they filmed themselves while doing it. It's disgusting and has rightly led to widespread outrage. Zelensky has compared the Russians to ISIS.
There is something that no one in the world can ignore. How easy...
I can't really say like, oh, the Russians are so horrible. Yet you got Ukrainian soldiers sodomizing Russian POWs. So, unfortunately, I accidentally stumbled on that on Telegram. Don't watch that if you want your peace of mind. Let's keep going.
Easily these beasts kill. This video of the execution of a Ukrainian prisoner of war, the world must see it. This is a video of Russia as it really is. What kind of creatures are they? There are no people for them. A son, a brother, a husband.
You can't talk this mess when you kill journalists for reporting the truth about Ukraine. You put them in prison. You can't you can't talk, Zelensky. You cannot talk. You're just as bad as Russia, you know, if they are the ones who actually decapitated a Ukrainian. Okay? If. Because most of the videos I've seen are Russians being very humanitarian to Ukrainian POWs. Can't say that for Ukrainians who capture Russian soldiers. Can't say that. Okay. Now, there are reports of, unfortunately, Russian soldiers raping Ukrainian women. All right. War is not pretty. I'm not on either side, but I won't side with neo-Nazis. I won't sympathize with neo-Nazis.
Someone's child. This is a video of Russia trying to make just that the new norm. Such a habit of destroying life. This is not an incident. This is not an episode. This was the case earlier. This was the case in Bucha. Thousands of times. Everyone must react. Every leader. Don't expect it to be forgotten. That time will pass. We are not going to forget anything. Neither are we going to forgive the murderers.
He seems convinced that the video is authentic. So does the European Union. But it gave a caveat before proceeding to chastise Russia.
We don't have more information on the veracity of the video. Having said that, if confirmed, this is yet another brutal reminder about the inhumane nature of the Russian aggression. Killing of prisoners of war is a very serious breach of the Geneva Convention and demonstrates once more Russia's complete disregard of international law, and particular international humanitarian law.
And what does Russia have to say? These were the exact words of their spokesperson. And I'm quoting, "First of all, we need to check the authenticity of this awful footage. Of course, this footage is awful, and first we should check its authenticity, and then we could have a pretext to check whether or not this is true, whether it happened, and if it did, where and by whom it was done. But first of all, in the world of fakes that we inhabit, we need to check the veracity of this footage."
And that's basically what it is. They have to check the veracity of that footage. Like I said, Ukraine is known for that savagery towards Russian POWs. Then, Russians have been, like I said, very humanitarian. Okay? Extremely humanitarian. When there was a bunch of Ukrainian soldiers trapped in a basement for days, to the point that they had to eat their dogs, Russians could have just gone in there, pretended to be very humanitarian and come out from the basement and then shoot them, but they didn't. They said, drop your weapons, come on out. Arrested them, made sure they got the proper care they needed. Okay? The news is lying and saying that, they're winning the war. They're heroic. No, they're not. Ukrainians' bodies are dropping like crazy, especially in Bakhmut. All right? And they are known, once again, for their savagery. Bashing somebody in the head with a sledgehammer and crap. All right. Not to get off topic. Let's get more into this. Ukraine war, Zelensky embezzled $400 million allocated by the U.S. for purchasing fuel. Seymour Hersh. Okay. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky embezzled hundreds of millions of dollars that the U.S. allocated for the purchase of fuel. According to the Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist Seymour Hersh. In his blog, he writes, Ukrainian government headed by Zelensky has been using American taxpayers' funds to pay dearly for vitally needed diesel fuel that is keeping the Ukrainian army on its move in with its war with Russia. It is unknown how much Zelensky's government is paying per gallon for the fuel, but the Pentagon was paying as much as $400 per gallon to transport gasoline from a port in Pakistan via truck or parachute into the Afghanistan during the decades-long American war there. This issue of corruption was directly raised with Zelensky in a meeting last January in Kyiv with the CIA Director William Burns. His message to the Ukrainian president, I was told by an intelligence official with direct knowledge of the meeting, was out of a 1950s mob movie. The senior generals and government officials in Kyiv were angry at what they saw as Zelensky's greed. So Burns told the Ukrainian president because he was taking a larger share of the skim money than was going to the generals. Burns also presented Zelensky with a list of 35 generals and senior officials whose corruption was known to the CIA and others in the American government. Zelensky responded to the American pressure 10 days later by publicly dismissing tens of the most abstemious officials on the list and doing little else. Oh, man. Oh, he thought if he could do that, he could get away with it. The 10 he got rid of were brazenly bragging about the money they had driving around Kyiv in their new Mercedes, the intelligence official told me. Meanwhile, Hearst, citing an intelligence official, said that the sabotage of the Nord Stream pipeline and lack of strategic planning with regard to Ukraine had caused a growing rift between the White House and the U.S. intelligence community. Okay, there's a total breakdown between the White House leadership and the intelligence community, the intelligence official was quoted by Hearst as saying. The alleged rift dates back to the covert operation last fall to blow up Russia's Nord Stream pipelines, a move that was purportedly ordered by President Joe Biden. Destroying the Nord Stream pipeline was never discussed, even known in advance by the community, the official said. Another issue dividing the Biden administration and the intelligence community is the lack of planning on Ukraine. The official highlighted Biden's decision to deploy 2 brigades a few miles from the Ukrainian border in response to Russia's special military operation. The actual manpower of the 101st and 82nd Airborne Divisions could total more than 20,000, but there is still no evidence that any senior official in the White House really knows what's going on in the brigades, the intelligence officials told Hearst. Are they there as part of NATO's exercise or to serve with NATO combat units? If the West decides to engage Russian units inside Ukraine, are they there to train or to be a trigger? The rules of engagement say that they can't attack Russians unless our boys are getting attacked, the official said. The official said that while the White House lacks clarity on its policy in Ukraine, the Pentagon is somewhat optimistically preparing for an end to the conflict. 2 months ago, the U.S. Joint Chiefs tasked members of the staff with drafting an end-of-war treaty to present to the Russians after their defeat on the Ukraine battlefield, Hearst citing a source. They're not going to lose. Russia is not going to lose. But it remains unclear what will happen if the Pentagon scenario goes wrong and Ukrainian forces fail on the battlefield, while the 2 American brigades deployed close to the war zone join forces with NATO troops and face off with the Russian army inside Ukraine, Hearst asks. This is a slaughter, man. This is a slaughter. This is not going to end well. It isn't. All right. So how many of you ever wondered about 9/11? How many ever wondered about it? You ever wonder about the update on that? Let's check it out, shall we? Here we go. Okay, John Brennan missing after CIA admits hiring 9/11 hijackers to fly planes into Twin Towers. As we all knew, this was an inside job. Here's a tweet from John O'Brennan. We needed a new Pearl Harbor, and 9/11 gave us that. A newly declassified U.S. government document has confirmed what alternative media has been reporting for years. The 9/11 attacks were an inside job perpetrated by the U.S. government assets. Let's see what's going on with this now. Fair use.
A newly declassified US government document has confirmed what the alternative media have been reporting on for years. The 9/11 attacks were an inside job perpetrated by US government assets. A court filing from the Guantanamo Military Commission, the court considering the cases of defendants accused of carrying out the terrorist attacks on September the 11th, 2001, revealed that the CIA recruited 2 of the hijackers before they flew planes into the World Trade Center buildings. Now that the public is familiar with the intelligence community's antics to overthrow a sitting US president, the notion the CIA could bear some responsibility for the 9/11 attacks seems within the realm of possibility. After all, the US government has a long and storied history of perpetrating false flag operations against the American people. Before we dive in, make sure to subscribe to the channel for more breaking news the mainstream media dares not touch, and join the People's Voice Locals community. The link is under the and was encouraging them to commit terrorist acts. Official investigations, ostensibly to conceal the fact that it was working with Al-Qaeda assets and was encouraging them to commit terrorist acts. According to the report, of the great many enduring mysteries of the 9/11 attacks still unresolved over 2 decades later, perhaps the biggest and gravest relate to the activities of Nawaf al-Hamzi and Khalid al-Midhar in the 18 months leading up to that fateful day. The pair travelled to the US on multi-entry visas in January 2000, despite having repeatedly been flagged by the CIA and NSA previously as likely Al-Qaeda terrorists. Mere days before their arrival, they attended an Al-Qaeda summit in Kuala Lumpur, during which key details of the 9/11 attacks are likely to have been discussed and agreed. The meeting was secretly photographed and videotaped by Malaysian authorities at the direct request of the CIA's Alex Station, a special unit set up to track Osama bin Laden, although oddly, no audio was captured. Still, this background should have been sufficient to prevent Hazmi and Midar from entering the US, or at least enough for the FBI to be informed of their presence in the country. As it was, they were admitted for a 6-month period at the Los Angeles International Airport without incident, and bureau representatives within Alex Station were blocked from sharing this information with their superiors by the CIA. When a member of the CIA's Alex Station suggested informing the FBI about the 2 hijackers obtaining visas to the US, he was shut down. We've got to tell the Bureau about this. These guys clearly are bad. One of them at least has a multiple entry visa to the US. We've got to tell the FBI. Mark Rossini, a member of Alex Station, recalled telling his colleagues. But the CIA said to me, no, it's not the FBI's case, not the FBI's jurisdiction. The FBI agents and the
In a normal world, for any government agency to overlook this, heads would roll. There would be executions. Okay? In China, when a minister of health decided to take bribes to look the other way when certain health products were passed out, were given the green light, and people died overseas because of him taking a bribe, the Chinese government convicted him and sentenced him to death. Okay? Unfortunately, in the United States, we don't have that for people who decide to pull this type of evil.
Files claim that the CIA also concealed information from the Bureau about the 2 hijackers' main US contact, Omar al-Bayoumi, who was under FBI investigation. Additionally, they believe the CIA used Saudi Arabia as a go-between to recruit the 2 hijackers in order to circumvent laws forbidding the agency from conducting spy operations on US soil. Though the lead investigator doesn't assert the reason behind the CIA's decision to withhold information from the FBI that could have prevented the 9/11 attacks, the nature of the CIA's clandestine Alex Station suggests nefarious motives. Canestraro does not make any conclusions as to why the CIA concealed vital information from the FBI prior to the attacks, which potentially could have prevented their execution, and why the Bureau subsequently played along with the agency's cover-up. Although one answer is provided by the unusual nature of Alex Station's setup, Russia Today reported. Namely, that far from infiltrating an Al-Qaeda cell to avert terrorism, the agency was seeking to influence and direct its activities in order to cause terrorism outside standard recruitment channels. Having stumbled upon such a monstrous connivance, the FBI would have known well to leave the entire subject well alone. The news that 2 of the hijackers appeared to have been recruited as CIA agents came as no surprise to John Lear. The former CIA officer and jet pilot has sworn an affidavit stating that the official 9/11 narrative is false. The CIA was intimately involved in the deception, and the Twin Towers were not brought to the ground by planes crashing into them on 9/11. John Lear, the son of Learjet magnate Bill Lear, was a retired airline captain and former CIA pilot who flew over 100 different types of planes during 40 years as a pilot. He held more FAA airman certificates than any other FAA certified pilot and flew secret CIA missions to Asia, Africa, Eastern Europe and the Middle East. Basically, you wouldn't want to argue with John Lear about flying in planes. He was as close as it gets to being American intelligence and aerospace aristocracy. And before he died in 2022, he was brave and honest enough to go against the establishment and leave a startling body of work proving beyond a doubt that the official narrative behind the 9/11 attacks is a lie. According to Lear, there are no planes to be seen in the holes of either tower or on the street below because there are no real planes. A Boeing 767 is 156 feet wide and 159 feet long. So most of the plane has to be on the outside of the tower in both cases, since there is simply no room for the entire length of the plane to crumple into. Why didn't we see 99 feet of Flight 11 sticking out of the North Tower or broken off, crumpled up, or crumbling into the ground below? And why didn't we see 122 feet of Flight 175 sticking out of the South Tower, or crumpled up, or crumbling into the World Trade Center plaza below? There is no plane or plane wreckage at all to be seen in the whole of either tower in any videos or photos. Lear pointed out another problem with the official narrative. The holes were too small for the planes to fit into. A Boeing 767 is 156 feet wide. The width of the hole in the South Tower was 106 feet wide, and the width of the hole in the North Tower was 125 feet wide. Some people may say that the wings of the Boeings merely folded back as the aluminium portion of the wings came into contact with the exterior steel columns. However, we can see this is not what happens in the videos. Extend your arms and walk through a doorway. What happens to your arms? That's torsion. The aluminium wings of the planes would not neatly fold back. They would be torn off. That's torsion. According to Isaac Newton's third law of motion, for every action there is an equal and opposite reaction. High school physics state that the force an aeroplane exerts on a building is the same as the force a building exerts on an aeroplane. Let's apply Newton's third law to Flight 175. In the 9/11 story, Flight 175 strikes the South Tower at 450 miles an hour. Now imagine that the South Tower moved at 450 miles an hour and struck a stationary Flight 175. We would not expect that Flight 175 to be undamaged. We would not expect that it would simply disappear into the South Tower. Any video that shows an aluminium aeroplane with a fiberglass nose cone gliding through a steel and concrete building violates Newton's laws of motion. The plane would simply be obliterated to pieces by the 14-inch steel box columns and the steel and concrete floor trusses before it got anywhere near the inside of the tower. Apart from one or two props placed there like a bit of tyre and a bit of engine, parts that didn't even match a Boeing 767, and like the laughable bit of engine on the Pentagon lawn, there were no real plane parts or debris to be seen, and no black boxes were ever found at Ground Zero. FAA Regulation 121 requires a comprehensive investigation of all crashes of scheduled commercial flights. Yet there were no official crash reports on the 4 incidents because there were no planes. Captain Russ Wittenberg is a former US Air Force fighter pilot with over 100 combat missions and a retired commercial pilot. He was damning in his assessment of the official narrative. The government story they handed us about 9/11 is total BS, plain and simple. Wittenberg convincingly argued that there was absolutely no possibility that Flight 77 could have descended 7,000 feet in 2 minutes, all the while performing a steep 280-degree bank turn before crashing into the Pentagon's first floor wall without touching the lawn. I flew the 2 actual aircraft which were involved in 9/11. The flight number 175 and flight 93, the 757 that allegedly went down in Shanksville, and flight 175 is the aircraft that's alleged to have hit the South Tower. I don't believe it's possible for a so-called terrorist to train on a Cessna 172, then jump in a cockpit of a 757-767 class cockpit, and vertical navigate the aircraft, lateral navigate the aircraft, and fly the airplane at speeds exceeding its design limit speed by well over 100 knots, make high-speed, high-bank turns exceeding pulling probably 5, 6, 7 Gs, and the aircraft would literally fall out of the sky. I couldn't do it, and I'm absolutely positive they couldn't do it. In conclusion, we can conclude that the planes were probably not real. Apart from defying the laws of physics with impossible crash dynamics, the planes have a CGI appearance and do not even look real. The question is, are the planes digital composites, CGI, inserted into real video, or is it a 3D projected image using advanced technology not known to the public? This type of technology was reported in the media before 9/11 pertaining to military psychological operations, PSYOPs. Here are a few notable quotes. According to a military physicist given the task of looking into the hologram idea, the feasibility had been established of projecting large 3-dimensional objects that appear to float in the air. WashingtonPost.com has learned that a super secret program was established in 1994 to pursue the very technology for PSYOPs application. The holographic projector is described in a classified Air Force document as a system to project information power from space for special operations deception missions. The elite have been feeding us on a diet of lies, but the people are slowly waking up to the reality of the world we're living in today. George Bush Sr. announced the New World Order during his presidency, but the 9/11 attacks represent the real beginning of that dark occult agenda. Here at The People's Voice, we're determined to continue reporting on the crimes of the elite and exposing their plans. Subscribe to the channel and join the People's Voice Locals community, my health, and give myself the vitality.
Okay, all right. So, we've seen it. Seen the proof. And it's It's like, wow. I mean, all those people who died in 9/11, they were just used as cattle to get into a war. Their lives were just expendable. Wow. A lot of things are coming out, man. So what are your thoughts about AI? What are your thoughts about them denying you insurance? Let's look into that, shall we?
Insurance companies deny claims, an appeal is not very likely. Federal data shows that companies issued more than 49 million denials in 2021, but customers appealed only about 0.2% of them. And while some denials come with specific justifications, most explanations are vague. Ali Rogan explores how at least one major health insurance company is using artificial intelligence to assess and often deny claims in bulk.
Investigative journalists at the nonprofit ProPublica found that the health insurance company Cigna uses an automated system that allows it to instantly reject claims on medical grounds without even opening the customer's file. Some are accusing Cigna of using the system to help cut costs at the expense of the patients, a claim which Cigna denies. Joining me now is Maya Miller, one of the reporters who worked on the story. Maya, thank you so much for joining us. Can you explain to me how this system works?
Yeah, absolutely. And when you go to a doctor or, see your healthcare provider, they'll send in a claim to your health insurance plan, and they'll list the diagnosis that think that you have, and then a list of tests or procedures that they want to run. We learned that there's a process that was developed at Cigna about a decade or so ago, in which they created this code, this computer code, this algorithm that says we're going to approve them if they match certain conditions, but if they don't match another condition, let's say a diagnosis that they don't think that is worthy of that treatment, then it will be sent to the desk of a medical director, which is a company doctor, and that doctor is going to be able to quickly sign off on rejecting that claim and saying we're not going to cover it. In 2 months last year, that happened in an average of under 2 seconds. So these medical directors were essentially saying for 50 patients at a time, they wouldn't even open a patient file, but they were signing their name off and saying, actually, this claim is not medically necessary, and so we're not going to cover it.
Now, I want to read to you from a statement that Cigna has provided. First, they say that this automated process allows us to pay providers for claims quickly and automatically, and allows medical directors time to look at more complex reviews. It also says that even a denial should not result in any additional out-of-pocket costs for patients who are using in-network providers. What did you find related to those two statements that Cigna makes?
Yeah, so on the first statement, it's true that some of the claims that are processed through the system, which is called PXDX, if they match the diagnoses and the treatments on the list, if the code sees that there's a match there, they will be automatically approved. However, then there's a batch of them that get automatically denied. And that's really what we're focusing on the story, is the batch of claims, which we found in 2 months last year exceeded 300,000 claims. So it's not an insignificant amount. And to the second point about, that this shouldn't result in any out-of-pocket costs for patients. Unfortunately, the reality is oftentimes when we go to a doctor, a nurse, or to see a healthcare provider, we often have to sign off on a form. And in that form, we're saying that, we'll take responsibility, financial responsibility for this outcome of this care. And so it does often get shunted onto the patient.
And what kind of procedures are we talking about that are getting routinely denied?
Yeah, so unfortunately, we were trying to look for a comprehensive list of all of these claims that processed through the system. We know that not all of the claims that Cigna has end up going through the system, but of those that do, we learned that vitamin D testing is labeled as part of the system. We learned that autonomic nervous system testing to test like whether your nerves are working well. If you have diabetes or other autoimmune disease, you can have some nerve damage in your fingers or your toes, and so testing to kind of figure that out among other conditions. Unfortunately, we could not find a comprehensive list of all of the different procedures that are tagged for the system, but those were two that we were able to conclude from our reporting.
Cigna and all insurers, frankly, in claims denial issues will say, well, there's always the appeal process. What does that look like in reality?
Yeah, so 1 in 7 claims are denied across the country, and health insurance claims. So it affects a lot of people. And yet one study found that 0.1% of all people who experience those denials actually took it to a step to do a formal appeal. When you're going about your day to day, maybe you're facing an illness or you're, facing a chronic disease. It's hard to find the time and wherewithal to be able to figure out how to appeal these claims. And the reality is that very few people do. And we actually found through our reporting that Cigna had a presentation in which they were putting forward the idea to put autonomic nervous system testing through the system. And in the cost-benefit analysis, assessing whether to do this, they assumed only 5% of patients would end up appealing this. And that was part of the calculation of whether to put this test into this process or program or to leave it out.
Now, Cigna is not the only insurer with some kind of automated system exactly like this. Do you have a sense of how prevalent automated systems are right now in the health system writ large?
It appears to be pretty prevalent, and insurance companies are dealing with millions and millions of claims, and so in order to stay on top of those and to maintain efficiency, which is what they've said, they've turned to these algorithms and computer coding programs to be able to process claims as quickly and efficiently as possible, is what they say. So it seems that this kind of technology is pretty prevalent across the industry, although we're still reporting that out for other insurance plans and trying to confirm that. But yeah, it seems like it's pretty pervasive.
Lastly, Maya, there was a robust debate happening about the hazards of using AI. Where does this conversation fit into the broader debate about the utility and the hazards of using artificial intelligence?
Yeah, that's a great question, and one that we're actually, posing to regulators right now. The former insurance commissioner of California, Dave Jones, was telling us that, in the statutes, you need to have a thorough, fair, and objective assessment of these patient claims. And he was saying that if a medical director or a company doctor for an insurance plan is really looking at a claim in less than 2 seconds, in an average of less than 2 seconds, can you achieve that result? So, I'd pose that question really to the lawmakers, regulators, and to see, where they would stand on.
This is what we're going through now. Okay, they can reject your insurance claim. Okay, with AI, they could use this. If you are a person that doesn't have the right thinking according to this government establishment, according to the New World Order. This is all going to be part of the New World Order, this social credit system. In China, they could take away your right to a job, your car, education. Okay? This is what's going on. Okay? And Joe Biden was a fan of the social credit system in China. Think cancel culture is bad? Imagine walking on eggshells in real life to the point where they could take away your job. They could take away your health insurance. But unfortunately, a lot of people are, pretty much in the dark about this or don't care. All right. Sad to say, you have a lot of this news isn't coming out, really. And a lot of people just don't care. All right.
Thanks for joining us. Thanks for joining us tonight. First up at 6, a botched police raid and a child porn investigation ends with a woman handcuffed after officers broke down the door to the wrong apartment.
And tonight, for the very first time, we're seeing the police body cam video showing just exactly what happened. Channel 3 New Haven Bureau Chief Matt McFarland has the story.
Police eventually collected a large amount of evidence from the subject's second-floor apartment, but the question remains, how did they end up on the third floor to begin with?
Police with search warrant!
The body cam video shows New Haven police breaking down a door and later even handcuffing a startled woman before realizing they're in the wrong apartment. The one they were looking for as part of a child pornography investigation, one floor down.
There's no excuse that we hit the wrong door.
We're told New Haven detectives raided the East Street building in the early morning hours of April 6th. On the first floor, a children's dentist office with apartments on the second and third floors.
Where's Tim? Tim, you're Virgo, Tim.
The neighbor downstairs?
According to the search warrant, New Haven police had information that from July to October, child pornography had been sent or received 4 different times from the IP address connected to Timothy Yurgo's East Street apartment. Yurgo, who previously worked for Planned Parenthood, had most recently worked in communications and marketing for Long Wharf Theater.
While there was a mistake made on the door, the New Haven Police Department, the Special Victims Unit, are focusing on the individuals that are abusing and taking care and abusing our children.
When police realized they were in the wrong apartment, they say they took the cuffs off the woman, went downstairs to Yurgo's apartment, collected evidence, and left. But they were called back 4 days later after learning he had killed himself.
Why didn't you wait till he came home and arrest him? There should be lawsuits for this.
As for the raid, New Haven Chief Carl Jacobson says in the last 2 years, they've served 224 search warrants to enter a house. In only 2 instances, including this one, did someone file a complaint. Now there's an internal affairs investigation to figure out what went wrong.
We're not happy that we hit the wrong door, but in watching the video, the officers and detectives did a great job talking to her and making it right.
If you need anything, you call me. We're going to get this fixed for you. And again, I'm sorry. It's probably terrifying for you.
While there is an internal affairs investigation, I did hear from the woman briefly today. She said she has an attorney now and did not want to say anything without him present. Reporting in New Haven, Matt McFarland, Channel 3 Eyewitness News.
Channel 3.
All right. My thing is that there's a lot of sloppy work. This was extremely sloppy. All right. Why didn't they arrest this dude? Why just leave? That's my issue with that right there. Let's get the information. All right. Okay. So apparently this guy, he was part of the Rainbow Gang. And they don't tell you a lot about these people, that a lot of them are into, that type of man-child relationships. Okay. Fortunately, well, in a way you could say justice was served, even though this guy took the coward's way out. We can say that much. Okay. Former Planned Parenthood director commits suicide after cops raid his home in child porn case. A former Planned Parenthood director suspected of child pornography crimes was found dead by suicide Tuesday in New Haven, Connecticut, according to local authorities. The Blaze reports Timothy Yurgo, 35, of New Haven, reportedly killed himself 5 days after police raided his apartment, and it's part of a child pornography investigation. Yurgo worked at the abortion chain for approximately 4 years, from 2018 to 2022, as the director of strategic communications for Planned Parenthood of Southern New England. An Instagram profile that the Blaze identified as his shows numerous photos of pro-abortion advocacy, including wearing a Planned Parenthood t-shirt and participating in pro-abortion events. The New Haven Police Chief Carl Jacobson told the Middletown Press that the person who died was definitely the suspect in a child pornography investigation and the person who had committed suicide. It was an open investigation, so he knew he was going to be arrested, Jacobson added. Here's more from the report. Jacobson declined to comment to confirm Yurgu was the suspect in that child pornography investigation, but Yurgu's neighbor and the state office of the chief state medical examiner both confirmed he died Tuesday morning. The medical examiner also confirmed Yurgu died by suicide. Police have not released details about the child pornography investigation yet. They said they are still investigating whether other individuals were involved. Yegan has been working for the Planned Parenthood abortion chain in 2018, according to his Instagram account. He still was employed there as recently as May 2022. A press release from the Planned Parenthood website shows in August, Yurgu began working for Long War Theater. This is not the first time Planned Parenthood employee has been arrested for sex-related crimes. Former Planned Parenthood abortionist Roger Ian Hardy was accused of sexually molesting several former patients and female staffers in 2016 before he fled the country. The abortion chain also has a long history of ignoring or helping to cover up sexual abuse, especially involving underage girls. Meanwhile, Planned Parenthood aborted more than 383,000 unborn babies in 2020, while bringing in more money than ever before. 1,714 billion income, aided in part by 633.4 million taxpayer dollars. Planned Parenthood's political arm also donates huge amounts of money to electing Democrats to office. Inpatient numbers have been dropping steadily in recent years amid numerous reports of alleged unethical and illegal activities, including selling aborted baby body parts, botching abortions that kill women, covering up the sexual abuse of minors, exploiting young girls by selling cross-sex hormones, and more. Hundreds of its employees also voiced racism complaints, including systemic racism, abusive behavior, and financial malfeasance. Other employees have accused Planned Parenthood of pregnancy discrimination. Wow. There you have it, man. There you have it. There's a lot I didn't know about Planned Parenthood. You going around, you bunch of pedos in Planned Parenthood, botch abortions, killing women. But one thing that gets me is the fact that you still have the black community backing abortions. Okay. All right. Okay, on to the next one. Speaking of talking about the Rainbow Gang, let's get into this story right here. All right.
Learn about LGBTQ plus in school.
Here we go. This is what's happening in school now.
And let me make this very clear. You don't have a choice whether or not you learn about LGBTQ plus in school. You don't have a choice.
This is a teacher bullying students about the alphabet agenda.
And let me make this very clear. You don't have a choice whether or not you learn about LGBTQ plus in school. You don't have a choice. It's one of our values, the British value. And if you refuse to do it, that will be dealt with severely. Why would I not? Why would I care if anyone in this room wants to love somebody, whether it's to be a man or a woman? Why would I care if someone wants to say, do you know what, I don't know if I'm more male or female, I'm exploring. Why does that matter to me? Why does that matter? It's not hurting you, but it definitely hurts other people by the words you use. You don't understand at this age the impact. When I was at school, and I remember it now, when I was in an English class, I used to sit with my hand like this, and you're sat now like this. I used to be sat like this. And the girl used to constantly bully me and say, oh, you're queer, you're gay because you're sat like that, and if you were a real man, you'd sit like this. So I could have said to you, oh, you're not being very girly like, you're sat like this. And actually, that still lives with me today as a 40-year-old man. That moment in that time, your words can hurt people. Why would anyone choose to say something that would hurt somebody else? And let me make this very clear. You don't have a choice whether or not you learn about LGBTQ+ in school. You don't have a choice. It's one of our values, the British value. And if you refuse to do it, that will be dealt with severely. And if you say something that's derogatory or can hurt somebody else in this room, that is very serious. And it's as serious as if you were using racist language.
This is not racist language, okay? People, I thought this was about, free speech, and people just don't want their children to be a part of that lifestyle. And if the child doesn't want to be part of this lifestyle, parents need to homeschool their kids, okay? Women need to just, if they are married, they're going to have to just be a stay-at-home wife, and the father works, the husband works, and the mother's going to have to homeschool the kids. Because these places, I just did a live stream on how California has introduced a kidnapping bill, where if the child says, you know what, I don't feel like I was born in the right body, the teacher could take the child to a group home without the parents' consent. Okay? This is wrong. This is what they're doing now. You can look it up. California kidnapping bill. This is what's going on.
Do not do it. Okay? That's the value, that's the approach we take in this school. And if there are people sat here who don't agree with what I'm saying, you need to go home and have a conversation with your parents and say, why are my values so different to what Britain is? Why have I got this view? Where's it come from? The only thing that you can be taken out of is sex education, and that is from when your parents speak to me and get permission. Nobody in this room has done that. LGBTQ is not sex education. That is relationships. Okay? You do not have the authority or the ability to refuse to do it. I cannot tell you how much having people not recognize who I am and openly say that they don't value who I am, because when you say I don't agree with LGBTQ people, you're saying you don't value me. I've given a lot to this world. I'm a good person. I've adopted 2 children, given them a fresh start. I'm a good human being. Why should I be judged based on who I choose to love, whether you agree or not?
The fact is not the fact of someone condemning you for who you want to love. Hold on one second. It's the fact of you want to push that on other people. You want to push that lifestyle on children. You want to push that lifestyle on other people who don't agree with you. You want the right to tell men, if you don't want to date a transformer woman, then you're phobic. And you should date me anyway. Let me tell you what's going on right now in the alphabet community. You have lesbians who are being assaulted by transformer women because they refuse to date transformer women, calling them TERFs, trans exclusionary radical feminists. Okay? These women are getting assaulted. And if they speak up, the alphabet community will kick them out of their fellowship. This is what's going on. You could look it up.
Feel less than human.
You could thank your fake black President Obama for letting the floodgates into this. Okay? As well as Trump.
Just think on that the next time you say something. And also be aware that Miss has an obligation. If anything happens like that in this room, she has to then deal with it in a very serious way. I'm hoping you don't choose to make the right choices because of sanctions. I'm hoping you're saying, actually, I won't say it because it might hurt somebody else. Has anyone got any questions before I go? No. All right, thank you.
That is crazy, man. That is insane. This is freaking insane. Okay. Recording exposes alphabet teachers' bullying of students. A British homosexual teacher at a state-run academy school in London was secretly taped telling his students that pro-alphabet education is mandatory, and if they disagree with it, you need to go home and have a conversation with your parents and ask them, why are my values so different to what Britain is? Why I got this view? Where does it come from? The 40-year-old teacher at the state-run secondary school, Stationers Crowdwoods Academy near London, has not been identified. In the audio, he conflates opposition to the alphabet behavior, relationships, and not valuing his gay self-identity, disagreeing with alphabet identity or identity politics without valuing him personally. This is common debate tactic of the LGBT activists. Can I tell you how much having people not recognize who I am and openly say that they don't value who I am? Because when I say I don't agree with alphabet people, you are saying you don't value me. He is heard saying on the audio tape. Pretty much, okay? WND has learned that the school in question paid its students the equivalent of $25 to visit a pro-alphabet history exhibit at the British Museum to celebrate February as Alphabet History Month. The exhibit they were paid to visit, called Desire, Love, Identity, Alphabet History's Trail, seeks to normalize homosexuality and transgenderism in history. In a column Wednesday, Canadian writer Jonathan Van Muren said the audio clip of a teacher reading his students the Riot Act really encapsulates the attitude of the educators towards diversity of thought. Van Muren's article appeared in LifeSite News, a leading international Catholic pro-life and pro-natural family views site. The audio tape captured by an anonymous student was tweeted out by Turning Point UK, a British offshoot of Turning Point USA, the popular conservative college student group headed by MAGA conservative Charlie Kirk. Turning Point UK bills itself as the largest conservative activist movement in the UK. The activist-minded British instructor equates opposition to homosexuality to opposing people on the basis of their race. See what I'm talking about here? This is what I don't like. This is what I don't like, okay? You take in your alphabet struggle and trying to equate it with black struggle or any ethnic group struggle in European countries, okay? And unfortunately, within the black community, especially the black American community, they can't see this as a detriment to themselves. They can't see that. And this is why they get away with saying so much, okay? Because they won't call it out, and, you know, because there's money involved with joining up with the alphabet community, because the alphabet community is very rich, okay? And this is why also the black American community will never get reparations, because they're never willing to stand alone. They're not willing to do that. Okay. That's what I was always thinking about with Martin Luther King's, you know, civil rights movement was really a failure. It really was. It was a failure because you had all these other groups joined with you, and they all getting a piece of the pie. They could all claim that, hey, my struggle is just like your struggle. Okay. And now you have people like John Leguizamo saying some nonsense like Latinos built this country. Okay. This is what it is, man. And now here we are. We're approaching the New World Order. Okay? Although the latter is inborn and unchangeable, like genetic homosexuality, cap, have never been proven, and many men and women who once were LGBT identified have left those lifestyles and their apparent identities behind. Okay. Van Muren says that the audio clip, which drew much criticism and some liberal support on Twitter, provides a perfect microcosm of how entitled post-Christian educators feel about the indoctrination they have been tasked with. Speaking for countless conservatives and traditionalists the world over, he writes, "What we have found as the alphabet movement achieved cultural dominance is that for progressive diversity is where people look different but think the same. You don't have a choice." Marin transcribes the activist teacher's stern words to the students. The tape provides little context as to what inspired his rant. Emphasis added. Okay. And he basically says, "Let me make this clear." The teacher tells the students, "You don't have a choice whether or not you learn about the LGBT plus in this school. You don't have a choice in one of our values. And if you refuse to do it, that will be dealt with severely." Severely. This is what he says. Wow. And these are the people talking about tolerance. These are the people talking about love. Okay. That's what's going on. I don't even want to read this article anymore. It's disgusting to me. All right. It's wild, man. It's insanely wild. Insane. Okay. Let's go right here. Let's talk about the Jeffrey Epstein situation now. All right. So, Jeffrey Epstein used JP Morgan as main bank for his sex trafficking operation. Wow. The late convicted sex trafficker Jeffrey Epstein was using JP Morgan Chase as the primary bank for his sex trafficking operation. Investigative journalist Liz Corkin made this revelation during her April 10th appearance on The Right Now with Ann Vandersteel on Bright on TV. Corkin, who has been doing a deep dive into the Epstein story for a long time. According to Vandersteel, the Epstein boomerang is back in flight, with JP Morgan and other banks being targeted for their role in moving money for the convicted sex offender. She added that the government of the U.S. Virgin Islands has a lot of questions for JP Morgan. Corkin, a award-winning author and documentary film producer, said the U.S. Virgin Islands filed a complaint against JP Morgan last year. Moreover, the U.S. Virgin Islands subpoenaed 4 other individuals, 3 of them billionaires, in its lawsuit against the bank. As the case moves forward and certain documents are unsealed, Corkin said people are starting to see more information about it. What the U.S. Virgin Islands is claiming is that Epstein was using JP Morgan as his main bank, and his bank accounts were used for his sex trafficking operation. Corkin replied to Vandersteel's question about the U.S. Virgin Islands moves. They claimed that the JP Morgan not only knew about it, but basically helped him cover it up. Wow. Insane. Let's take a look at it, though. Okay.
Patients lined up because, well,
how it's helping
seem to be the target for some of Epstein's money moving. And of course, they have questions. The Virgin Islands particularly has a lot of questions for JP Morgan with respect to the sex trafficking and the money laundering that Epstein was doing, and the money that he took in from some of these billionaires that were affiliated with Epstein. So let's start with why the U.S. Virgin Islands has decided to sue not only JP Morgan, but why are they going ahead and subpoenaing several billionaires closely tied to Epstein? What's all this about?
Okay, so let's start with why they are suing. So basically what
the Virgin Islands is claiming is that Jeffrey Epstein was using JP Morgan as his main bank, and his bank accounts were used for his sex trafficking operation. And they claim that JP Morgan not only knew about it, but they basically helped him cover it up. So in response, the Virgin Islands filed a complaint against JP Morgan back late last year. And as this case continues to move forward, we're starting to see more and more information because certain documents are starting to be unsealed, number one. And number two, what broke last week is that the Virgin Islands has subpoenaed 4 wealthy men, 3 of them are billionaires, in their lawsuit against JP Morgan in regards to Jeffrey Epstein. So those wealthy individuals would be the Hyatt Hotel chairman, Tom Pritzker, the Google co-founder, Sergey Brin, real estate investor, Mark Zuckerman, and then the co-founder of CAA, which is the Creative Arts Agency, which is the big talent agency in Hollywood, and also former Disney executive, Michael Ovitz.
Okay, so let's zero in on one particular gentleman, somebody that you had told me you really wanted to do a dive on, Tom Pritzker. He's part of the Pritzker family. They are pretty notorious up in Illinois. He's also a philanthropist. He and his wife have given to several different charities. One of them I found very interesting, Rare Charity, that spends a lot of time on trying to make the world a better place. Of course, they're concerned about climate change and quality of living and people, just the usual stuff. It seems very common for all these super wealthy people to have these charities that supposedly do all this good stuff, but it seems to be always the opposite we learn when you start really digging under the hood. So who is Tom Pritzker?
Well, to start with the whole family as a whole, the majority of the family is very far left wing. And they have used a lot of their money and their philanthropic efforts to push transgenderism. So that's kind of interesting because that's a very hot topic in the news right now. They're also major donors to the Democratic Party. And actually, Tom Pritzker himself, via the Pritzker Group, was one of the biggest donors, or was the biggest donor, I believe, or maybe the second biggest donor to Hillary Clinton's campaign back in 2016. So they're a super elite family and they're a super liberal family. So Tom Pritzker, who is the man that's subpoenaed, he's one of the wealthy men that's subpoenaed in this case involving Epstein. The reason why he's interesting is because Tom Pritzker has a history with Epstein. And this information is openly available, including in some mainstream media outlets. And it's just kind of wild for me to see all these mainstream media outlets reporting on how these famous billionaires have been subpoenaed, but no one's mentioning the fact that Tom Pritzker has a history of being aligned not only with Jeffrey Epstein, he was actually cited in another lawsuit where Virginia Giuffre, who was a victim of Jeffrey Epstein, claimed that she was forced to have sex with Tom Pritzker. And so if we are to believe Virginia Giuffre, if she is telling the truth, which I have...
These billionaires doing this type of stuff and they're not getting caught tells you about America. Tells you a lot about America, the American government system. This guy supposedly deleted himself, and the people who are involved in his sex trafficking ring, nothing happens to them?
No reason not to believe her. That would at best make Tom Pritzker a criminal accomplice in Jeffrey Epstein's child sex trafficking enterprise. And again, to go back to the mainstream media, I'm reading all these mainstream media articles about this case, and all of these articles make notes, we don't know why they'd be subpoenaed. Well, do you think maybe it has something to do with the allegations that were brought against Tom Pritzker? Do you think maybe it has something to do with the fact that he also was on the flight logs for the Lolita Express? Do you think it also might have something to do with the fact that not only was he in Jeffrey Epstein's black book, which by the way, many people were, and just because you were in his black book does not mean that you were part of his criminal activity. I have people on my phone that I've never once called or texted. However, what's interesting about Pritzker is that in Jeffrey Epstein's black book, not only did Epstein have at least a dozen phone numbers for him, including an emergency number, he literally listed him as numero uno. That was his nickname. And that's in Spanish, and translated into English, we know that numero uno means number one.
Right.
So what does that mean? What was Epstein trying to tell us? Is Pritzker his number one guy? Is he his number one, possibly his number one client, possibly a co-conspirator? So, you know, it's just stunning to me that there's all this information that's open source that shows these ties and allegations against Pritzker, and the whole mainstream media is just kind of like la la la, you know, acting like they don't know why someone like him could have been subpoenaed. It's crazy.
Well, obviously, this story has been going on for far too long, and you have done an amazing job of keeping it in the news. That Epstein boomerang really has your face on it as it's coming back in, lopping people's heads off, frankly. But when you look at some of the other things Pritzker's involved in, right now we're starting to really understand and unpack this whole money laundering operation that has been pervasive in every aspect of government here in the country and around the world. And, you know, we've been learning a lot of different ways they've been laundering money, through mortgage fraud, through insurance fraud. Perhaps maybe it's even art fraud, right? Where you're saying a piece is worth, you know, $500,000 when in fact it's really only worth 50 cents on a good day. But people are paying, you know, exorbitant fees, like, Hunter Biden's art, right? And one of the areas that Pritzker and his wife were very involved in, he was past chairman, is the Art Institute of Chicago. I'm just curious if he was if this is a hypothetical, if he was laundering money through art, would any of his bank accounts at JP Morgan be dedicated into that area, or was his affiliation with JP Morgan and his banking relationship? Do you know anything more specific about his arrangement?
We don't know anything more like specific in terms, you know, and, you know, their interest in these people could just be that they do have evidence of Epstein's crimes and weren't necessarily involved in those crimes. However, if you actually read the original complaint filed by the Virgin Islands, if you look at the language that they talk about in the complaint, they constantly mention co-conspirators in the trafficking ring. They constantly mention individuals who participated in, either directly or indirectly, and conspired with him in a pattern of criminal activity related to the sex trafficking. And then the suit also mentions that basically Epstein brought high-profile clients, this is what they allege, Epstein brought high-profile clients to JP Morgan in exchange for them turning a blind eye to his criminal activity. So some of these people maybe weren't part of Jeffrey Epstein's pedophile ring, but maybe Jeffrey Epstein used them to bring them as clients to JP Morgan. So JP Morgan then in effect would continue turning a blind eye to his criminal activity, as the Virgin Islands is alleging in the suits.
Okay. So we know Epstein had an island. His island was down there in the Virgin Islands. Epstein Island was, you know, down there. But as far as Virginia Giuffre, when was this alleged incident or alleged sexual affair or rape, whatever you want to call it, with Pritzker? When did that happen?
Well, okay, so she actually named off a bunch of different names in a lawsuit that was filed in 2015. So, and these names are part of the court records. So I guess what I'm saying is that they're not necessary. The whole lawsuit hasn't been unsealed. So I'm only seeing bits and pieces of it, right?
Right.
So some of these names are mentioned in footnotes and motions and in different filings that are not necessarily in the original filing, right? So what happened is in 2015, Virginia Giuffre filed a lawsuit actually against Ghislaine Maxwell, because Ghislaine Maxwell basically called Virginia Giuffre a liar for statements that she was making in media and whatnot. So she filed this lawsuit against Ghislaine Maxwell that actually since has been settled. However, the Miami Herald and other news organizations then filed a lawsuit to get these records unsealed. And they started unsealing these records in 2019. And in 2019, that's when a bunch of these names that Giuffre claims, of people that Giuffre claims she was forced to have sex with, were revealed. And one of them was Tom Pritzker, and there was other high-profile individuals that were named. So that was back in 2019. Well, fast forward to last November, okay, of 2022. That judge agreed to unseal more court records, despite Pritzker and many other John Does objecting to further unsealing.
Ooh.
And so when that happens, the media reported that when those records are unsealed, and they haven't been unsealed yet, there's going to be more disclosure of 8 individuals, including Tom Pritzker. And we don't know who those people are. And we don't know when that's going to come out. I've read various reports, some said that in a few weeks it would come out, and clearly it wasn't a few weeks because it still hasn't come out. And then, some reports have said it's going to come out in months. And so we don't know when those records are going to come out. So, so the stuff with Pritzker, the allegations with Giuffre against Pritzker stems from the 2015 lawsuit that she filed against.
Dozens of court docs relating to the 8 of pedophile Jeffrey Epstein's associates, including billionaire hotel magnate, will be unsealed after judge rules public interest outweighs right to privacy. You should have done this before. You shouldn't have to be that way. He committed a crime. Let everybody know.
Ghislaine Maxwell. The exact dates of when she claimed she was forced to have sex with each of these individuals, I have not been able to find that in those court records. So I don't know. And I don't know if she would have been a minor at the time or not.
Okay, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, more with the intrepid Liz Crokin and this entire Epstein.
Okay, guys, so for the sake of time, I'm going to cut it short. So we're going to go on to the next story here, okay? So we're going to talk about China now. All right, and their sanctions. Here we go.
Now, in the latest in the US-China tensions, China has now put Lockheed Martin and Raytheon, 2 American defense firms, on a list of unreliable entities. This, Beijing says, is over US arms sales to Taiwan. The move also comes amid heightened tensions between the two countries after US military shot down a suspected Chinese spy balloon, and Beijing warned of countermeasures against relevant US entities in retaliation. Take a look at our next report for more details.
China is going after Lockheed Martin and Raytheon. It has put the defense companies on an unreliable entities list over arms sales to Taiwan, banning them from imports and exports related to China. These are Beijing's latest sanctions against the 2 U.S. firms, and they come as tensions between China and the U.S. have escalated after the U.S. military shot down what it says was a Chinese spy balloon, and a day after Beijing warned of countermeasures against relevant U.S. entities that undermine China's sovereignty and security. Neither company sells defense products to China. Raytheon declined to comment. Lockheed could not be immediately reached for comment. Lockheed makes the F-22 Raptor fighter jet, which flew the mission to shoot down the alleged Chinese spy balloon off the coast of South Carolina, using the AIM-9X Sidewinder missile made by Raytheon. Beijing also banned the companies from further investment in China, barred senior management from entering the country, canceled residence permits for any staff in China, and imposed fines that are double the contracted amounts of their arms sales to Taiwan. It was not clear how China would enforce such fines, which it said must be paid within 15 days. Last February, China sanctioned the two firms over a $100 million arms sale to Taiwan, a self-ruled island which Beijing views as a breakaway province. The U.S. does not sell weapons to China. However, it is bound by the 1979 Taiwan Relations Act to provide Taiwan with the means to defend itself, and U.S. weapons sales always attract China's anger.
Belarus President Alexander Lukashenko has invited U.S. President Joe Biden to discuss and reach a peace deal for Ukraine. Lukashenko says Russian leader Vladimir Putin will come to Minsk for...
Okay. So let's get into that China sanctions. All right. All right. Yes, here we are. Okay. China reveals new details of Raytheon Lockheed sanctions. JP Taiwan, China revealed new details of sanctions and previously announced against two U.S. weapons manufacturers Tuesday, including ban on Chinese companies doing business with them. China imposed trade and investment sanctions in February on Lockheed Martin and Raytheon Technology Corp., Raytheon Missiles and Defense, for supplying weapons to Taiwan, the self-governed island claimed by China. China's Ministry of Commerce said in a statement late Tuesday that the sanctions include a ban on exports and imports by the two companies from and to China to prevent Chinese products from being used in their military bases. It added that Chinese companies should strengthen their due diligence and compliance systems construction to verify transaction information and should not knowingly conduct business with two companies while importing, exporting, or transporting products. It wasn't clear what immediate impact the penalties might have, but the restrictions on imports and exports could hurt the two companies. The United States bars most sales of weapons-related technology to China, but some military contractors also have civilian businesses in aerospace and other markets. Last September, Raytheon Missiles and Defense was awarded a $412 million contract to upgrade Taiwanese military radar as part of the $1.1 billion package of U.S. arms sales to the island. Taiwan buys the majority of its weapons from the U.S., which is its biggest unofficial ally. In recent years, China has frequently sent fighter jets and warships towards the island, surrounding it at different times in campaign of military pressure and intimidation. The sanctions also prohibit the senior executives of both companies from traveling to China or working there. They listed Lockheed Martin CEO James Donald Tyslett, COO Frank Andrew St. John, and CFO Jesus Malvev, and President Wesley D. Kramer, and Vice Presidents Angus Soder and Chandler Nihon from Raytheon Missiles and Defense. So it's getting China's putting the screws in the American military right now. And this is could lead up to even more of a faster approach to World War III. All right. Okay. Okay. Okay, this will be the last one here that I have. Last one for tonight. Sick and sad. Sick and sad. That's what I could say. Sick and sad.
United Nations just called for the worldwide decriminalization of child rape and paedophilia.
Let me play that back so you guys could hear it exactly what I just heard.
World Economic Forum, in conjunction with the United Nations, just called for the worldwide decriminalization of child rape and paedophilia. The globalist elite have been attempting to normalize paedophilia behind the scenes for years now, and now we are seeing the fruits of their labor right out in the open. Before we dive in, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and join the People's Voice Locals community.
Fair use, by the way.
Criminalized globally. Written by the International Committee of Jurists, UN Aides, and the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights, the report was released on International Women's Day with the goal of guiding the application of international human rights law to criminal.
Women's Day. They passed this on Women's Day. Whew. That's evil. That is evil. All right. Well, all these women that were for feminism and equality, look what it got you. Look where it got you. Here we go. Here we go on the train to hell.
Criminal law. Called the 8th of March Principles, the report calls for offences related to drugs and sex, including paedophilia and incest, to be decriminalised. According to the legal experts at the United Nations and WEF, laws against paedophilia constitute an attack on the human rights of, wait for it, children. That's right. According to the globalist elite, the age of consent is a discriminatory concept that discriminates against children who want to have sex with adults.
I can't believe what I'm hearing here. I can't believe what I'm hearing here. Get your kids out of school and start homeschooling them. That's all I can tell you.
Report states, with respect to enforcement of criminal law, any prescribed minimum age of consent to sex must be applied in a non-discriminatory manner. Enforcement may not be linked to the sex or gender of participants or age of consent to marriage. Moreover, sexual conduct involving persons below the domestically prescribed minimum age of consent to sex may be consensual, in fact, if not in law. In this context, the enforcement of criminal law should reflect the rights and capacity of persons under 18 years of age to make decisions about engaging in consensual sexual conduct and their right to be heard in matters concerning them. Pursuant to their evolving capacities and progressive autonomy, persons under 18 years of age should participate in decisions affecting them with due regard to their age, maturity and best interests, and with specific attention to non-discrimination guarantees. Minors, of course, cannot truly consent to sex with an adult, something these so-called experts should know. This is just another evil policy pushed by the globalist elite on unsuspecting citizens of Western countries. If you're wondering how any adult could possibly bring themselves to argue that laws against paedophilia infringe on the rights of children, then you must remember that to the globalist elite, bad equals good. And we have now reached the phase of their master plan where they are rubbing it in our faces. Regular viewers of this channel will know that we are interested in building the body as well as the mind. Don't let state determined to euthanize anybody they consider useless, including children. Then Trudeau worked Canada further into the WEF's good books when he began freezing bank accounts of pro-freedom protesters involved in the trucker protests. Now Trudeau's Canada is laying the groundwork to take children away from parents who don't support their young children having sex change surgery and taking life-altering hormones before they're old enough to have any understanding of the consequences of their decision. And liberal Washington State is already on the move with this agenda. Washington State passed Senate Bill 5599 on Thursday, which allows the state to legally remove children from their parents if they do not consent to their children's gender transition surgery.
I think that's the California kidnapping bill.
All Democrats voted yes to pass the controversial bill, while all Republicans voted no. Democrats are waging a war on the right of parents to be in charge of the care of their children, particularly around LGBT issues and sexual-related matters, such as birth control and abortion. Senate Bill 5599 allows shelters to keep runaway juveniles from their parents, so that they can get abortions or gender surgeries, including the removal of girls' breasts or a uterus. And paedophilia isn't the only taboo they're determined to smash. Incest is also on the WEF's agenda, and they are determined to have it legalised in all WEF-infiltrated countries, starting with Germany. According to the WEF, anti-incest laws violate the human rights of brothers and sisters who want to have relationships and start families, and a government-backed group in Germany is now parroting the WEF line. It hardly needs to be said that laws against incest are there for a reason. The World Economic Forum claim they are committed to improving the state of the world. In reality, they are determined to drive humanity into disaster, and they are attacking us on numerous fronts. Have you noticed that politicians and celebrities who have been corrupted by the globalist elite are becoming more desperate and aggressive in their language towards those they perceive as enemies? Last week, Bruce Springsteen's long-term friend and E Street Band guitarist Little Steven Van Zandt declared that conservative Americans are scumbags, cowards and pussies, and must be exterminated once and for all. 2 hours after taking the stage with Springsteen on Sunday, Van Zandt posted and then deleted the disturbing hate-filled rant on.
Wow. Outrageous doesn't begin to describe the actions of the Republican white supremacist scumbag cowards that need guns to feel like real men. Gen Z, Gen Y, and Gen X will unite and exterminate these cockroaches once and for all. If you take away the guns from the people, the only person that has the guns are the government, and you know how that turns out for the people. You know how that turns out. That's Nazi Germany all over again. And sad to say, these people who are for what the World Economic Forum, they're going to be also suffering. They're going to be in those camps. I don't know if you guys forgot, but they still got those FEMA camps and those FEMA trains. It's going to be like World War II all over again.
Twitter that called for the genocide of conservatives in America. He's far from the only celebrity calling for genocide in America. Hollywood star Will Smith said that Trump supporters should be monitored, put on a list, and cleansed from American society.
And as painful as it is to hear Donald Trump talk, and as embarrassing it is as an American to hear him talk, I think it's good. We get to hear it, we get to know who people are, and now we get to cleanse it out of our country.
And don't forget.
Wow. Well, this is Will Smith, and you saw how he kissed his firstborn son. Not his firstborn son. The son, Jaden. He kissed him right on the lips. You see, he's a little weird. Major weird.
Jane Fonda, who just last month on The View called for the murder of conservatives in America as a solution to pro-life laws.
We have experienced many decades now of having agency
Yeah, you can notice the purple hair. Oh boy.
over our body, of being able to determine when and how many children to have. We know what that feels like. We know what that's done for our lives. We're not going back. I don't care what the laws are. We're not going back.
I think the women will rise up.
That's the activist.
That's Jane
speaking, and she probably will get a Nobel Prize.
But it's the truth.
Very soon.
It is the truth. But we're not going to do it.
Besides
We're gonna
marching and protesting, what else do you suggest?
Well,
it doesn't happen overnight. It's not a miraculous. What did you say?
Murder.
She's kidding. Wait a second. She's just kidding.
No, she's not. No, she's not. These feminazis are not kidding. They want the right to kill their babies, want the right to have loose sex, and have no consequences for it. You want the equality of being a man without paying the consequences. Men pay the consequences every day for having sex with women they have no business having sex with. Child support, divorce, half of their assets taken. Okay? All right? And let's be honest. Okay, look, some of you guys are going to get mad when I say this. If you cheated on your wife, there are consequences. All right? You get half your stuff taken. Sorry, there's consequences there. If you're a woman that wants to cheat and you get pregnant by someone else that isn't your husband, there's consequences there. If you want to you want to be married, but you don't want to have kids, don't get married. Or find somebody that doesn't want to have kids as well. Preferably older. But you see this selfish delusion on the right. On the left. You see what's coming.
Say that. That's
you don't know. They'll pick up on that and just run with it.
the worst.
She's just kidding.
Well, let me talk to you about. Let's move on and talk about Jane's
No, she's not. Look at her face. No, she's not.
activism.
There is a war going on.
They call this activism. And then these same women are going to cry, where are all the good men gone? Why can't I get married? Because no man wants to get married once they find out that your body is a gas chamber. Nobody wants to get married to you if they risk the fact that you want to kill the kid.
And the elites and their puppets in politics and entertainment are becoming more desperate by the day to crush any dissent. Do not comply. It is more important than ever before to stand your ground and refuse to hand over your birthright to the globalist elite. Here at the People's Voice, we are determined to continue.
All right. So, I'm done. Done for the night. Had a little bit of a struggle stream here, but got it done. So, if you like the content that's being shared here, more information about this channel is in the description box. You can check me out on Spotify. Okay. Like, share, comment, and subscribe. Give this video a like. Helps me get pushed through the algorithm. Leave a comment in the comment section. Let's have a discussion on what we've learned today. Tonight, actually. Let me know what you think about what's going on in our world. And what do you think could be a solution to help you survive these horrible times that are continuing to get worse. Okay, that's it. Later.